Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 4 2017 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic last week, after having such a good week overall in terms of straight up and a decent week in terms of against the spread, and very quickly shout out to Michael G in the comments for pointing out I made a calculation error there. So instead of going 8-8 against the spread, like I said in my video last week, I went 7-8. So Michael G, thank you for the correction there. I appreciate that. After having such a great week straight up and decent week to below decent week against the spread, this week it all went down south in a very quick and bad way. So last week against the spread, I went 4-11-1. And straight up, I pulled in 500. I think for a lot of people, in terms of against the spread, I think a lot of it was for me where the spreads were so small in terms of like the games that I thought, okay, the Rams should beat the Niners by more than 2 points. They beat them by exactly 2 points. And kudos to the Rams and Niners, by the way, for providing such a fantastic Thursday night game. Nobody expected the Bears to snap their 9-game losing streak in September and beat Pittsburgh. Nobody expected the Jets to get a win before the New York Giants. Nobody expected Minnesota to play that well without Sam Bradford, though after I looked at some numbers, and I'll tell you in a second, Case Keenum actually plays very well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knew? And nobody expected the Saints' defense to hold Carolina's offense to 13 points, or that Carolina's offense would be that bad that they would hold them to 13 points. And I didn't expect Houston to play as well as they did. So it was just a really topsy-turvy week in terms of just picks in general. And I'm happy that the week is over, and it's a brand new week, and we all can, reset and try to move forward with everybody's picks. And now overall for the year, I am 19-27-1 against the spread, which is about 41%, or 41.3%. And straight up, since I won 500, I'm still 9 games above 500 at 28-19. Alright, so time for my picks and thoughts on each game. So starting this Thursday, when the 1-2 Chicago Bears go to the 2-1 Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here, -7, and Green Bay straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-2 New Orleans Saints go to England, go to London to play at Wembley Stadium for the second straight week, and take on the 1-1 Miami Dolphins. New Orleans Saints here are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like New Orleans here, -2.5, and New Orleans straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Buffalo Bills go to the 3-0 Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons here are 8-point favorites in this game. I like the Bills here against the spread to cover that 8 points, so I'm going to take Buffalo here +8, but I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 2-1 Baltimore Ravens. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh here -2.5. And Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 0-3 Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to hedge my bets here, just because I look at these two teams, and it's one of those crappy toss-up games of the week, and one of those pick-ems that I really can't see going either way. So I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns here +3.5, but I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals straight up. I think it could be that close of a game where it comes down to a last-second field goal or a 21-18 kind of game on the last-second touchdown. The next game, when the 2-1 Los Angeles Rams go to the 2-1 Dallas Cowboys, the LA Rams are 7.5-point underdogs in this game. I like the LA Rams here, +7.5, and I guess a bit since it's over a touchdown margin, I like the LA Rams here for the upset. I'm going to take the LA Rams to beat the Dallas Cowboys straight up as well. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Tennessee Titans go to the 1-2 Houston Texans. The Tennessee Titans are 1.5-point favorites in this game. Like Tennessee here, -1.5. And Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Detroit Lions go to the 2-1 Minnesota Vikings. There has been no line on this, so I'm going to assume this is a pick'em. So I'm going to take Detroit here in a pick'em situation, both against the spread and straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Carolina Panthers go to the 2-1 New England Patriots. The New England Patriots are 9-point favorites in this game. I like Carolina here +9, but I'm going to take the New England Patriots straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 1-2 New York Jets. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Jacksonville here, -3.5, and Jacksonville straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-3 San Francisco 49ers go to the 1-2 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 7-point favorites in this game. I like San Francisco here +7, but I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Next game, when the 2-1 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 0-3 Los Angeles Chargers. The LA Chargers and Eagles game, this is a 1-point spread, so essentially a pick'em sense. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles here +1, and Philadelphia Eagles straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-3 New York Giants go to the 1-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here at -3, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Oakland Raiders go to the 2-1 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Denver here -3, and Denver straight up. And then the next game, the Sunday night game, when the 1-2 Indianapolis Colts go to the 1-2 Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks here are 13-point favorites in this game. I like Indianapolis here +13, but Seattle straight up. And finally, for the Monday night game, when the 2-1 Washington Redskins go to the 3-0 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Washington here +6.5, but the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. All right, so time for my thoughts on each game. Green Bay Packers at Chicago Bears at Green Bay Packers. I want to congratulate Aaron Rodgers for achieving a couple firsts in his career on Sunday. This was his first win against the Cincinnati Bengals all time, and it was also his first win in overtime in his career. Aaron Rodgers has played 7 overtime games in his career and never won one before. So congratulations to Rodgers for that, and I believe he also has now beaten all 31 teams that he could play. So good for Aaron Rodgers as well in that sense. But it was a weird game where predominantly for about 65 to 70% of the game, the Bengals were the team dominating. Aaron Rodgers, for only the second time in his career, threw a pick six. And I believe that did. And both pick sixes have been at Lambeau. William Jackson returned it. I believe they were up 21-7. And we're all thinking, could the Bengals, pull off an upset? And they pretty much did through the third quarter, held their ground until the fourth quarter when Rodgers threw that big touchdown to Nelson, who, by the way, has now the second most touchdown passes in Packers history with 66. I believe only Don Hudson with 99 has more touchdowns in the Packers history. And then with the Packers defense, they finally came up with a stop, even without Mike Daniels, a couple other defensive pieces, a couple other offensive pieces. They're able to win the game and get a huge confidence-building win to go into the game against Chicago. But while for Chicago, they just got a big win, period. I don't think very few people, unless you were a very anti-Steeler person or a die-hard Chicago Bears fan, expected the Chicago Bears to end their 9-game losing streak and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers the way they did. And the key was they pounded it on the ground. Jordan Howard ran for the second most yards of his career, and I believe they had 227 or 228 yards on the ground, which is incredibly impressive. And it was the best rushing game for the Chicago Bears since Week 4 of the 2014 season. And with that performance and with how they've done, they have the 8th best rushing offense in the NFL. And that's how the game was. The defense did a fantastic job. Antonio Brown was, I believe, the only receiver that had a great game. 10 receptions for about 110 yards in a TD. Nobody else. Schuster, James, Bryant, Vance McDonald. all those receivers really couldn't do anything against the Bears defense, which was incredibly surprising. But now I think about it, they should have beaten Atlanta. The Bears should technically be 2-1 with 2 home wins against 2 very impressive teams with the Atlanta Falcons and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And by the way, fun fact, Mike Glennon now, his last 2 wins have been against the Pittsburgh Steelers as a starting quarterback. So, good for Mike Glennon ending that schneid. But this game, to me, when you look at the Packers and the Bears, I think the Bears have shown you at home that they are a good defensive team and they can be a hard out at home. But on the road, their one road game when they went to Tampa Bay, they got blown out 29-7. I don't think, with the Green Bay Packers and with how Glennon's been playing, I don't think they're going to look that bad. But I do not expect them to win, just like you would think at home, where the Bears could pull off the upset. Also, Aaron Rodgers is 14-4 against Chicago, and he's 7-2 at home. So this is one of those things where, do I think the Bears, they could use some of this confidence on a short week, to help them? Sure, but it's also a short week, and they're going on the road. And then remember the last time, earlier this year when they went to Tampa Bay and looked absolutely awful. I don't think the Bears are going to look that bad when you have the 8th best rushing offense. This is the Packers we're talking about here. And I just think with how this game is going to go, I do believe the Packers will rebound from their almost near loss at home against Cincinnati last week to show that they're still the predominant driver's seat in the NFC North by handling business and beating the Chicago Bears by a decent margin to help show that, while the Bears, have shown flashes, they're still the Bears, and they're still a young team with a lot of struggling pieces, with very few receivers. I think the Packers' defense and offense should be able to take advantage of that. So, that's why I like Green Bay here, -7, and Green Bay straight up. Next game, Saints over Dolphins. The New Orleans Saints, congratulations to them. This was one of their more complete and impressive games all around. This was the fewest amount of points given up by the New Orleans Saints defense since Week 3 of the 2014 season. And they also forced the most turnovers since Week 9 of last year. And when you look at how everybody played, I thought Mark Ingram had a solid game. He made some contribution. Michael Thomas had 7 receptions for 87 yards. That's the kind of big game they're, kind of a decent game they're hoping to play from their big receiver after they traded away Brandon Cooks. And they also are going to get wide receiver Willie Snead back, which would be a decent, significant boost for the offense. And I think also one of the other big reasons was Miami, after such a gritty, tough win against a talented Los Angeles Chargers team, and even though they got Young Hoku to miss the 40-yard field goal wide right on his own power, but still they had a nice gritty win. What an absolutely pathetic performance they did against the New York Jets. I mean, Josh McCown was throwing bombs to Robbie Anderson. The Jets defense was smothering the Dolphins offense. That was the fewest points the Dolphins had scored since Week 13 of last year, when the Ravens blew them out, I believe, 36-6. They scored 6 points then, too. And it was the fewest total rush yards they had since Week 12 of the 2015 season. Jay Ajayi only had 11 attempts for 16 yards. I believe he had been injured in that game. I believe he was dealing with some injury, and I guess it must have... So you could contribute that to some of the factor, but I think, for the Dolphins, it was just a pure, flat-out bad performance. They just fell flat. And the Saints and Dolphins have split the last 4 meetings, but I'm going to take the Saints here just predominantly because I feel that the Saints, they've shown more life in 3 games. I know the defense is horrid. And, Cam Newton, Greg Olsen has a broken leg, and Kelvin Benjamin went down with a knee injury. So really he's throwing it to Curtis Samuel, Kelvin Shepard, Devin Funches, a bunch of average at best football players. However, when you're the Dolphins, and you got a team that, the Bills put up 24 points, and the Raiders put up 45, and you go in there with a decent offense of Jay Ajayi at running back, you have Julius Thomas with a solid tight end, You have three decent to good receivers in Kenny Stills, Jarvis Landry, and Devontae Parker. I mean, Devontae Parker's kind of on the border of average. And you can only put up 6 points. I'm going to give the Saints the edge in this one just because, I just think the Saints, they should be able to build off this. And if, I know Jay Cutler has better talent and more healthy, but Jay Cutler has at times shown you that, even at Jay Cutler's good days, Jay Cutler can have a very bad day, which is worse than what Cam Newton could ever do. So just with that in mind, I'm going to take the Saints here just because I've seen them more consistent, and honestly just seeing Miami's performance against the Jets, I'm hoping and I'm thinking the Saints defense can do just as well to provide the Saints defense enough to let the Saints offense do its job, score enough points to get this one in London. In a interesting kind of game between two teams that one maybe found its spark, while the other one lost its spark last week. So that's why I like New Orleans here, minus 2.5. In New Orleans straight up. Atlanta over the Bills. I want to give the Atlanta Falcons a lot of credit. After seeing what happened in Super Bowl 51, 28-3 lead getting blown, you would think this team would have a Super Bowl hangover. And obviously, they haven't. They're 3-0. There are only 1 or 2 undefeated teams left. You can criticize the defense, because that is now the second time in 3 weeks that a controversial or a one drop or one play should have been the difference of the game for the Atlanta Falcons to lose those games. But at the end of the day, their offense has been spectacular and it's been consistent. Though you do have to give the Lions defense a decent amount of credit. You had the idea of Atlanta, where Matt Ryan going into the game went 309 pass attempts without an interception. He threw 3 interceptions within a 15 passes span. So kudos to the Lions defense for causing that much havoc. But when you have the Atlanta arsenal of weapons of Devontae Freeman, who was leading the league with 4 rushing touchdowns, who's been an absolute great red zone threat. Julio Jones is making Julio Jones type plays and it's making big chunk plays. Sanu's been the good chain mover, and Gabriel breaking speed, from the short passes to score touchdowns was very significant. And when I look at Atlanta as well, at least Atlanta can get a pass rush. Their secondary may have some struggles with penalties and all whatnot, and just they've been fortunate, but they can get a pass rush. Even without Big Beasley, I was impressed by that. Grady Jarrett also had a nice solid game. He had 4 solo tackles. And I think he's a great nose tackle presence for the Atlanta Falcons. And when you look at Buffalo, though, I have to say, when you look at their 3 games, they beat a Jet team decisively, with a good balance of running and passing. And then they almost beat a Panther team if they couldn't score. Remember, that was only a 6-point game. If Buffalo could get 1 scoring drive together or 1 touchdown drive together, they win that game 10-9. And we're looking at the Buffalo Bills here being 3-0. And then after seeing what they did against Denver, they were able to, with some penalty help, they were able, and their kicker, Stephen Hauschka, the former Baltimore Ravens and Seattle Seahawks kicker, who made 2 field goals of 53-plus yards in the game. That's the first Bills kicker to do that in the same game in their franchise history. So kudos to him. They've only given up 2 offensive touchdowns in 3 games. That is an incredibly impressive defense. Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have really done a nice job of building this defense to be attacking, to be constantly moving, to be making plays, and to give Tyrod Taylor with Dennis Erickson as their offensive coordinator a good game plan to basically have a Alex Smith, Sam Bradford kind of approach to the game. If you don't throw turnovers, we trust our defense enough to cause enough havoc, to give you short fields, and give you positions to win games pretty decisively. But I'm going to take Atlanta here just because it's the idea of this is a home game for Atlanta. And do I think the Bills' defense, though, can do a great job? Yes, they can. They've shown against a high-powered offense in Denver who put up 42 points against Dallas. They showed up against the Panther team with decent weapons. They can contain the Atlanta Falcons' offense enough for cause it to have some trouble to get Matt Ryan to throw incompletions or throw interceptions or cause some havoc. But with it being at home, I just think the Atlanta Falcons are going to feed off of that home crowd energy and try to use what they did in Green Bay with how they played the same way with Buffalo. Except the key thing, the difference is even though Tyrod Taylor doesn't nearly have the arm ability that Aaron Rodgers does, Tyrod Taylor has a bit more mobility, which could be killer for the Falcons, just because that could be tough to move around. But I think it's going to be a great game. It's a very good defense against a very talented offense, and an offense and defense kind of the same way. I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons here, just because I trust their team as a whole. They've got 3 wins, and they haven't had any bad offensive moments, unlike Buffalo. That if Atlanta can get a decent pass rush going with their corners that they trust, they could make Tyrod Taylor's day a rough day. Should be a good game. I trust the Bills enough over the last 3 weeks to give them the +8 because I think Buffalo's defense can hold the Falcons' offense to a lower point total than 30. And if it's below that, I think it could be let's say, a 24-17 game. Which, with that logic, which I could see, that could be enough for the Falcons to win, but the Bills to cover. So that's why I like Buffalo here +8, but the Atlanta Falcons straight up. Next game, Steelers over Ravens. Wow. That was an awkward day for both teams. The Steelers snapped a 5-game winning streak against 500 teams or worse that ended the year or when they were playing them. They ended Chicago's 9-game losing streak in September. But it's been weird because if you look at the offense, Le'Veon Bell's not doing that bad. Right now he's 11th in the league in rushing, and they have the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL right now in Antonio Brown, who leads the league in receptions and yards with 26 receptions and 354 yards through 3 games this year. And he has double the yards of all the other receivers. But I just think there was an aspect with what the Steelers couldn't do. They couldn't get anybody else open. Like I was mentioning earlier. Juju Schuster, Martavius Bryant, Jesse James, Grimble, Darius Hayward-Bay. Nobody really could contribute other than Antonio Brown. So you basically double him, just let the other guys try to do something, and either their offensive line will get pushed around or moved. They also lost Ramon Foster during the game, which is significant. But I just looked at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I was like, that was just a rough game, and also they couldn't stop the run, 228 yards. Well, all that going for the Steelers in a rough day, the Baltimore Ravens had probably one of their worst games in franchise history. Joe Flacco threw for a grand total of 8 yards in the half. He's not Joe Flacco to me today. He's Joe Floppo, Joe Fluco, Joe Flunco, whatever you want to call him, any degrading name. He earned that on Sunday morning. That was an absolutely pitiful game. And I even thought with Marshall Yonda being out, I thought the offensive line could do enough. Obviously, they couldn't. And Joe Flacco, who now has still the longest active streak with games with a pick, now at 9, he just looked like an overvalued, overhyped quarterback yesterday. And you know what? For everybody that's an anti-Flacco person, anti-Raven person, if you want to, rag on Flacco, that's your right. I'm not going to, stop you from doing it. I get that. And to just, cap it off, three other facts. One, Joe Flacco ended up with the ESPN scale having a .8 quarterback rating. That's the worst of his entire career and the worst of the season. And that, mind you, is worse than Andy Dalton's, the one that we beat the crap out of 20-0, where he had 5 turnovers. Flacco had 2 turnovers, but he just did worse. And I believe he only had 28 yards of total offense. That's not just scrub territory. That's not in the league-worthy territory for that performance. And it also tied the worst loss in franchise history. We also lost by 37 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 1997. And it was also the most points given up by our defense since week 1 of the 2013 season, when we allowed 48 or 49 points to the Denver Broncos in Peyton Manning's 7-touchdown game. And we also have 4 straight wins against Pittsburgh in our home stadium. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here just because after seeing how bad the Ravens played, I could say that there was some motivation. And you could say with everything that, that happened over, in London, everything that went on, you could say, well, that contributed to it. But when you lose by 37 points, outside noise, traveling, long distances, first time, that doesn't excuse a 37-point loss. Because that was just showing a clear an unprepared game plan that they could not execute at all. So it's so we have 4 straight wins against Pittsburgh at home. But just after seeing that, I didn't mind if we lost to Jacksonville. But to lose like that and to be embarrassed in front of the international crowd, and especially for all those fans that went to London to watch the Ravens play, that was shameful, and I was ashamed to be a Raven fan for that type of performance. Because that is not the type of Ravens product that should be out there. We deserve better than that. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here just because even though Pittsburgh had a rough day themselves defensively, we can't really run the ball that well most of the time. Our offensive line without Yanda's there, and they had a chance to win the game. And yeah, we forced a lot of turnovers against the Browns and the Bengals. And we stopped their yards. They only had Kenny Britt really and AJ Green as their top receivers. This is a roster that has 2 top receivers and a great running back and a decent offensive line. It's healthier than ours. So again, would I be surprised if the Ravens won this game? No. The Ravens and Steelers are always close games. The record doesn't matter. But I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers here just because I've seen their defense. They're tied for second in the league with sacks. And after all the pressure that Jacksonville could get on Flacco, Pittsburgh can get that similar type of pressure, which will mean doomsday for the Ravens. And another loss for them to drop to 500. And I kind of expected this to happen. I really wanted us to beat the Jaguars because we needed that win because we play the Steelers and Raiders the next 2 weeks. And even though the Raiders showed their secondary is not, it's not good, and at times with decent quarterbacks they can, burn them like Cousins did. I don't expect if Bortles can put up 44 points on our defense, Carr can do the same thing. So that's why I like Pittsburgh here minus 2.5 and Pittsburgh straight up. Next game, Bengals over Browns. This one is really just a weird pick'em game. Where again, congratulations Cincinnati after not scoring after not scoring a touchdown in the first 2 games. They scored 3 touchdowns, including the pick 6 from William Jackson. But at the end of the day, the offense couldn't show up when they had to. They didn't have Tyler Eifert, who was supposed to miss multiple weeks with a back injury that he's dealt with throughout his career. And it's the first time since 2008 that the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-3. I believe they finished 5-11 that year, which would be incredibly frustrating, or 4-11-1, something like that. But I do want to give credit to guys like Vincent Bray, who was leading the team this year with 15 tackles. They are also going to get Vontaze Burfict back, which will help that defense in terms of the quarterback of the defense and a playmaker. But even with the 24 points they put up against Green Bay, they're still the worst offense in points and the second worst total offense in yards. However, they're playing a Cleveland team that has just been very bad. Cleveland, in their last 30 games, have only won 2 games. And DeShone Kizer, as much as he's been impressive with some of the plays he's making and the fight he's shown, getting Duke Johnson, Crowell, Higgins, Britt, DeValve, and all these decent, Browns players together, he is leading the league in interceptions with 7. And Duke Johnson Jr. and Seth DeVal are actually their 2 top receivers in terms of yards for the Browns. So, this is one of those games. Would I be surprised if the Browns won this game? No. Because if you really look at these 2 teams through the first 3 weeks of the season, the Browns have played better football. The Browns could have beat Pittsburgh. The Browns had a tough game against Baltimore, but against Indianapolis, even though Indianapolis got on a huge lead, the Browns were scoring right back and made it up to a 3-point game. And Kizer threw for 3 touchdowns. But I'm going to take Cincinnati here because there was one key stat that kind of made me the clincher with this one. Every team in the National Football League through 3 games has been able to lead a game at some point. The only team that hasn't been able to do that is the Cleveland Browns. So, again, you could say I'm dumb. I said, I wasn't going to bet on Cincinnati. But you know what? After seeing what Cleveland did and after seeing how close the Bengals were to beating a very good Packers team, in my opinion, you know what? I lied, and I'm going to just, go back. And, if they lose to the Browns, which, again, I'll be frustrated with myself, but I won't be surprised. You can tell me, look, you should have never taken the Bengals. I get that. I'm going to take the Bengals here just because I'm going to go with the talent and just looking at the Browns. I just felt that they haven't led yet. Like, the Bengals could, with that talent, if they can play like they did, Bill Lazor put a good first impression on, they can win this game and finally get off the schneid. While for Hugh Jackson, his slide to the end of his coaching career in Cleveland continues to happen. So that's why I like Cleveland plus 3.5, but Cincinnati straight up. Next game, Los Angeles over the Cowboys. Give the Dallas Cowboys a decent amount of credit. They played their, I believe, 61st primetime game or something like that. They have the second most primetime appearances on Monday Night Football in Monday Night Football history, and they have the second most wins in Monday Night Football history behind the 49ers, and the Dolphins only have more Monday night games. I also do want to congratulate DeMarcus Lawrence for being the second Cowboy to have 3 sacks on a Monday Night Football game. The other guy that did that was Ed Too Tall Jones. And if you look at Dak Prescott, he went 13 of 18 for 183 yards, and he had 3 total touchdowns, and he played a really solid game against a Cardinal defense that had a lot of talent on it, and a Cardinal defense that was smothering the Dallas offensive line. And I would be very concerned with that, because that Dallas offensive line for like the last couple of years has been one of those impenetrable units that can't, get moved. But Chandler Jones, Von Miller, Kindici, Hassan Reddick, all those guys were getting through that line and putting a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott. So you compare that to the Los Angeles Rams, who Todd Gurley only became the 3rd Rams running back in their franchise history to have 3 touchdowns within a first half. And Todd Gurley now has scored more touchdowns this year in 3 games than he did all of last year. And with this offense, this LA offense is one of the best in the league. They put up already put up over 100 points. It took until week 6 last year to hit 100 points. And I also want to congratulate the duo of Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins. They became the first pair of Rams wide receivers to have 100-plus receiving yards each in the same game since 2006. And Jared Goff, for the most part, besides that one pick to Nathan Foster, looks like a competent NFL quarterback, which I'm very impressed by. And you look at this Rams team, true, that could be a bit discouraging, but giving up 39 points to the Niners. But seeing how the Rams played, I will give the LA Rams this win here just because David Irving is still not going to be back. And just looking at that Rams defense, I just see more talent. I see a defense that can get through Dallas' offensive line. I see better corners that are healthier. Even though I believe one of their Kayvon Webster is still dealing with an injury. And if you look at Orlando Scandrick, he's playing with a plate in his hand. You look at Jordan Lewis, he's been up and down. Nolan Carroll's been tough, and he hasn't looked good at times. Where you look at Joyner and Johnson, they've been a pretty solid cornerback duo. And I just see with the Rams, Sean McVay was the former offensive coordinator for Washington, so he knows this Cowboy team from last year, and he basically knows the formula on how the Cowboys want to play football. And just knowing that with the kind of offense he has, with the movement, and with Jared Goff's array of weapons and the defense he has behind him, I think the Rams should be able to finally pull this off and win their first game against Dallas in their last 3 tries. I think it's going to be a great game. Would I be surprised if Dallas won? No, because they have the better quarterback and they have the better line. But just looking at the Rams team as a whole, I got to trust that Rams defense and offense to do enough to get Dak to feel uncomfortable, to get Dak to make mistakes, and for Jared Goff to be able to capitalize on those to be able to get the win. So that's why I like the LA Rams plus 7.5 and the LA Rams straight up. Next game, Titans over Texans. Give the Tennessee Titans a lot of credit. They've only given up 2 sacks this year as an offensive line. They have one of the top 5 better lines in the league. Marcus Mariota threw for 2 touchdowns in the game. In his previous 5 games, he only had 2 touchdowns thrown combined. So Mariota looks solid. Rashard Matthews had a big 55-yard touchdown. Avery Williamson, Jarrell Casey, Zach Brown, all those great defensive players for the Titans were able to shut down the running game for Seattle, which was having its struggles. And DeMarco Murray hit a 75-yard touchdown run against Seattle. That is the longest TD run by Seattle that's given up since Week 2 of the 2009 season, when Frank Gore ran it for 80 yards down the field against Seattle. The Tennessee Titans are also the number 2 rushing offense in the league, number 6 in points, and number 5 in yards. This is a very good and well-balanced offense with very good decent to very good players all around. There is no one superstar of that offense. It is just a consistent, balanced offense full of smash running and good, decisive play-action passing that can either be deep or middle or short. And they will be playing the Houston Texans, who, by the way, played their best game against the Patriots in a very long time. Probably the best loss they've had. Jadeveon Clowney scored the first defensive touchdown off Tom Brady since 2009, and this is, I believe, the first time in Jadeveon Clowney's career he's had back-to-back fumble recoveries as a Texan while in the NFL. And I have to give that Patriot offensive line some credit in terms of harassing Houston's biggest player in Justin James Watt. J.J. Watt has only gotten half a sack on Tom Brady in 6 games. That is incredibly impressive, and I commend the Patriots for being able to stop the most effective weapon on the Houston defense. Deshaun Watson also was the 5th QB in NFL history to throw a TD as a rookie on the Patriots under Belichick. But the Texans, even though they had a huge coming out party this week, let's slow everybody's roll and let's see what they do this week against a more respected and more talented Tennessee defense. And I'm going against the grain here. Houston hasn't lost at home to the Titans since the 2011 season, and that game was even a throwaway because they had clinched the number 1 seed. But I'm going to take the Tennessee Titans here because I believe in the Titans' run game. I believe in the Titans' defense doing enough to stop people. And I don't believe Deshaun Watson going in against the Brian Arakpos, the Caseys, the Woods, that he'll be able to make enough movements within the pocket to skip away from these guys and dominate them for a huge win in their division to get to 3-1 and solidify their place as first place in the AFC South. So that's why I like Tennessee here, minus 1.5, and Tennessee straight up. Next game, Lions at Vikings. Detroit is 10-8 in their last 19 games in which they trailed in the 4th quarter. So you can honestly say maybe Detroit had it coming. That, you know what, all this luck they had with beating the Bears in overtime, the Vikings twice, Washington, trying to think here, the LA Rams, Jacksonville Jaguars, all this luck that they had in terms of getting lucky bounces or big pick sixes or any plays like that, it finally bit them in the butt after Golden Tate's touchdown, which I initially thought was a touchdown, was ruled incomplete and caused the 10-second runoff, which ended the game to the Atlanta Falcons in a 30-26 win. They also, though, I have to give the Lions defense a good amount of credit. They've caused the 2nd most turnovers in the NFL. I believe only behind us. So kudos to them. And it's weird because they're playing a Viking team led by a quarterback right now that somehow has his best games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it doesn't matter if they're in St. Louis or LA or if they're in Tampa. Case Keenum can play really well against Tampa. In 3 games in his career against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here are Case Keenum's biggest numbers. He's completed 69.7% of his passes. He's thrown for 793 yards, 7 TDs, and 1 interception. And I believe Case Keenum is the first quarterback in NFL history to play and beat a same team 3 different times, representing 3 different cities and states. He beat them in 2015 as a St. Louis Ram. The next year he goes to LA and beats the Vikings in 2016. And then, 2016 is an LA Ram. And then as a Minnesota Viking, he beats the Tampa Bay Buccaneers again. I also want to congratulate running back Dalvin Cook from Florida State. He has the most rushing yards by a Vikings rookie in 3 games to start a career. They have the third best, and they also have the third best run defense in the entire NFL. Fortunately for Detroit, they've been trying to get a running game going, but I don't believe they have the pieces for it. I think this game can be very close, and if Case Keenum can play just as anywhere decently, if he can make Stephon Diggs look like, the best receiver in football again, they have a chance to win this game. I'm going to take Detroit here just because I trust the Lions defense, and I trust this Lions team to be able to, against this Vikings team, they did it twice last year, to pull off another fourth come from behind win. And even if they don't win, I have enough confidence to say the Detroit Lions will play better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they are a better team than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, in my opinion. So that's why I like Detroit over Minnesota and to pick them. Next game, Patriots over Panthers. The Carolina Panthers defense looked awful. They've only scored 2 touchdowns in their last 2 games. The Saints put up more points on the Panthers than the Niners and Bills combined. Christian McCaffrey right now, with the injuries to Olsen and Benjamin, is the leading receiver on this team with 18 receptions for 173 yards. And you just look at the Panthers and go, this is not the team I was expecting. Cam Newton is, 2 TDs, 4 interceptions, 61% completion percentage, 588 yards. That's not good enough. Especially when you're making the big-time money like Cam Newton is. You expect better from that. And they are playing a New England team that right now, they are thankful that they won, but they really feel lucky and confident that they can, refine and play better. For Tom Brady, this was his 41st career fourth-quarter comeback. Only Dan Marino, Peyton Manning, and Brett Favre are the only QBs that have more fourth-quarter comebacks in their career. And also, I do want to congratulate Tom Brady. He's the second QB in NFL history to throw 5 touchdowns in a single game at the age of 40 or older. The other QB was Warren Moon in 1997 when he threw 5 touchdowns in a game against the Oakland Raiders. Though, with the defense, I think that is this team's Achilles heel because they can't do really anything. They've given up 75 points in 2 of their first 3 games. And even though they lost one, they could have very easily lost to Deshaun Watson and the rookie quarterback to win this, to win that game. So when I look at it, I just look at New England Patriots here and say they should be able to win this. It's their final home game for a little while before they go to Tampa next Thursday. They're going to have a little bit more of a road trip to go through. And seeing this Panthers team, I'll give the Panthers plus +9. Because I just don't see how the Panthers offense can look that bad. Well, if they look bad against the Saints, they can look that bad against the Patriots. But after seeing how embarrassed and outplayed they were by the Carolina Panthers, by the New Orleans Saints, I expect the Carolina Panthers to motivate themselves to play another fantastic game against these 2 franchises. The last couple times have ended in controversy, hence the Tuckett game with Cam Newton back in 2013, and then you have the Space Jam game. Panthers, right. When you look at the Panthers, you look at them and say, it's the idea of they don't really have that much of an offense, but I expect with this Patriots defense, which has given up 75 points in 2 of their 3 games, that, the Panthers should be able to keep the game close to the Cam Newton being able to at least competently throw decently. Should be an interesting game, and I'm going to take Carolina here +9, just because I don't see the Patriots defense. If they couldn't stop Deshaun Watson as a rookie, even with Cam Newton banged up with his ankle in the offensive line, and possibly no Olsen and Benjamin, they should be able to keep within a 9-point game, higher scoring than that. So that's why I like Carolina +9, but New England straight up. Next game, Jaguars over Jets. Jacksonville, what a 2 of the 3 weeks they've had. They beat the Texans 29-7. Then they beat us 44-7. And then in the middle, they had a Good first half against Tennessee before the bottom fell out. So this Jacksonville team is a pretty good team. Blake Bortles was second QB in 5 years to throw 4+ touchdowns or no interceptions on a defense that in their previous 2 games gave up 10 points or fewer. Carson Palmer was the last guy to do that against the Bengals back, I believe, in Week 10 of the 2015 season. Mercedes Lewis, good for him. He became the 3rd Jaguar to have a 3-touchdown game in their history, joining Jimmy Smith and Allen Robinson. It was the largest margin of victory for the Jags since Week 16 of the 2007 season. And just for a fun little mini fact on Mercedes Lewis, he only had 3 touchdowns in the last 3 seasons going into the game. So he basically produced his annual quota of 1 touchdown per year for 3 years in 1 game. And I also want to congratulate Leonard Fournette. He became the first running back since Fred Taylor for the Jags to score a touchdown in his first 3 games of the season. And also for the Jags, this was probably my most impressive stat that I found. The Jags had a 43-game losing streak when they allowed their opponents to run for over 100 yards. That was snapped by the Ravens on Sunday morning. And the Jags are 2-1 for the first time since 2007. And they're playing a Jet team that honestly has a huge amount of confidence. They're not the winless team in New York. The Jets won a game before the New York Giants. And just for this week, okay, the Giants still may have a better record. They probably won't make the playoffs, but they may have a better record than the Jets. But for this 1 week, it's alright to be a Jets fan and to brag that we were able to win a game before the New York Football Giants did. The ugly stepsister beat Cinderella. The ugly stepsister did something first before beautiful Cinderella and the Giants. And I also want to give the Jets defense credit because their last 2 divisional home games, they held the Bills to 230 yards of offense, and they held the Dolphins to 225 yards of offense. So that's pretty impressive. And Josh McCown also had lost 9 straight starts, so good for him, too, to get off the schneid and get another win in his career. And one of the big reasons why was Robbie Anderson. I believe he had like a 68-yard touchdown. He's leading the team in receiving yards and receptions, or in receiving yards. He has 9 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown this season. Though while the Jets have won 3 straight games in this series, I'm going to take the Jags here just because the Jets, they had their moment, and they could beat Cleveland next week. They could. But I look at it and say, for the Jags, this is a team that if they really wanted to tell people that they could be a possible wild card team or a possible AFC South winning team, they need to win this game against a Jet team that, just in all aspects, even without Allen Robinson there, with Jalen Ramsey kind of hobbling, but he played through, they just are the clearly better team in terms of running, passing, blocking, and skill positions. If they really want to prove that and get to 3-1, which would be incredibly impressive for the Jags, very rare state they're in where they're 3-1 and, tied for the AFC South lead, they need to win this game against the Jets in a game that they should win. Again, it's the Jags and the Jets, so the Jets may pull off another upset where, nobody thought they could win, and the Jags may cough it up and say, just as we want to put faith in the Jags let us down. So, that's why I like Jacksonville here, -3.5, and Jacksonville straight up. Next game, Cardinals over Niners. I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals here, just for the simple reason of kind of like with Indianapolis. I want to give San Francisco though their credit. They put up their most points on offense since Week 15 of the 2012 season. That's really impressive. And Kyle Shanahan's offense and the way it was working looked very good. I thought it was good and consistent. Carlos Hyde has had a very good year. He was stirring the league in rushing so far this year. And Pierre Garçon, he had the most receiving yards in the game since Week 9 of the 2013 season. But when you look at the Cardinals, I just think it's something where, kind of like with the Colts game, I just look at the Cardinals and say, I see more talent. I see healthier players. I see more consistent players and teams. Like when you look at Arizona, I'm going to congratulate Eric Fitzgerald, who tied a career high in receptions with only 13. I also want to, and also for the first time since Week 17 of the 2010 season, he had a game of 10 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown, and now he is 8th all-time in receiving yards. which is Larry Fitzgerald. Also, Carson Palmer became the fourth QB in NFL history with two teams, which he has thrown for over 100 touchdowns with. I believe the other three are Kurt Warner, Fran Tarkington, and Peyton Manning, who have 100 touchdowns with 2 ball clubs. The Cardinals, the House of Cards, has been it's been a mixed hand for the House of Cards for Arizona. In their last 9 home games, they are 500 with 1 tie, which you could argue they're under 500 in my opinion, or they should be in their last 9 home games. And Arizona has not lost a game against the Niners since Jim Harbaugh left. But I'm going to take Arizona here just because it's kind of like with Indianapolis. And I can see the same thing happening. San Francisco has proven over the last 2 weeks that they're a better team than people think. And you could say they're bad Seattle. But if you have 2 competitive games, this is going to be their 3rd straight division game. And you lose the first division game by 3 points. And then the next game you lose by 2 points. That's at least showing that, hey, they can compete within this division. And Arizona's shown that, what do you think about them? They may be able to beat bad teams, but they'll make it closer than you want them to. So, I'm going to take Arizona here just because I trust enough talent. Kind of the same thing. And they showed some life for basically the first 60% of the game against the Cowboys. But would I be surprised if San Francisco won this game? No. But I do not expect a blowout. If the Cardinals blew out the Niners, that would be a tremendous shock with how the season's gone. So that's why I'm going to take San Francisco here +7, but the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Next game, Philadelphia at the Chargers. I'm going to take the Eagles here because I think the Eagles are one of the 4 or 5 teams that you really can look around and say they've had a consistent season. Where when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, LeGarrette Blount finally had a decent game. This was the 2nd highest rushing game as a non-Patriot in his career, or since the 2011 season. He had, I believe, 66 yards. That was the 2nd highest amount since 2011 as a non-Patriot that he put up. So he had a pretty decent game. Wendell Smallwood also had a decent game. The receivers, they got had a rough game. Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey put up, I believe, under 60 yards each. And the hero of the day was Jake Elliott, the practice kicker from the Cincinnati Bengals, who became the 2nd kicker in NFL history to kick 2 field goals in the final minute of a game. The other kicker was Doug Pelfrey in 1994 when he did it with the Bengals against the Eagles. And it's also the longest field goal in Eagles history. It is the longest field goal by a rookie in NFL history, and is the longest kick that was kicked against the Giants in their franchise history. So again, just 3 little fun kicker facts there. And also, the Eagles have been able to force offenses to provide the fewest rushing attempts in a game per opposing offense. They also lead the league in time of possession, which is very key. And they are playing a Los Angeles Chargers team, or Chokers team, that just can't win games, especially at home. They've lost 6 straight home games, and in those 6 last home games, Phillip Rivers has thrown 12 interceptions. He threw 3 more on Sunday against Kansas City. This is just one of those things where, again, the Chargers, for the most part, it was kind of the same thing. It was a competitive game again. But Phillip Rivers of the offense, at the very core moments, choked it. That's the thing. It ended up being a 14-point spread, spread with Kareem Hunt, but that was another close game. And the Chokers blew it again. Again, that's not going to count for the one-score game record aspect I've said over the last couple weeks, which they're 9-18 over the last 3 seasons in one-score games. But still, this just keeps happening to the Chargers. They just can't win. Even though I do want to give Melvin Ingram, I've been kind of critical of Melvin Ingram. He is 2nd right now in the league with sacks, so I believe 5.5. So yeah, he's been proving that he's been worth the money through the first few weeks. You could say Joey Bosa's helping him, and I think that does contribute a bit. But if you're doing that well, good job there. And also for the Eagles, this would be a good thing for the running game. The Los Angeles Chargers have the 2nd worst run defense in the game, and they also have lost the most fumbles on offense. And the Eagles, I believe, have caused a good amount of fumbles. So, kind of good positive there. But I think this game will be interesting, but I'm going to take the Eagles here just because they've been a more consistent, well-rounded team, and the Chargers will just keep being the Chargers and lose. They could be competitive against Philadelphia. They could be competitive against anybody. But if you're watching a Charger game, pretty much most of the time, bet that the Chargers will lose, and you'll be more right than not on most occasions. So that's Philadelphia +1. and Philadelphia straight up. Next game, Bucks over Giants. It was the first time in over 8 games the Giants had scored more than 20 points. And one of the biggest reasons is Odell Beckham Jr. I looked this up. In their last 8 games, Odell Beckham is 40% of the reason, 40% of the offensive touchdowns in the last 8 games for the Giants. That shows you his value. Do I think he's the best receiver in the game? No. But do I believe he should be one of the higher paid ones? Yes, he is the most valuable player on the New York Giants. And again, the Giants, they also had Sterling Shepard make a big play. But that offense, that was just rough. And they're playing a Tampa team that it should be motivated. Jacquizz Rodgers, and they should, after next week, they still want to have Doug Martin. But Jacquizz Rodgers only has 84 total rushing yards. They also give up the second highest total yards per rush in Tampa. And the third most passing yards given up by Tampa over the last 2 weeks. Even though, again, you could say that's a bit skewed. But I'm going to take the Bucks here just because I'm going to trust Tampa Bay in this situation. With their talent, if they can get through that offensive line, they should be able to stuff the run decently enough. And the Giants, if they can take out Odell, they really haven't been able to make any other big plays. Brandon Marshall's been ineffective, and Sterling Shepard really only had 1 big play in 3 weeks. And that's not good enough. So, yes, that's why I like Tampa Bay here, -3. And Tampa Bay straight up. Next game, Broncos over Raiders. The Oakland Raiders looked absolutely awful on offense in Washington, which surprised me. They were 0 for 11 on third down. That was the worst percentage they had since 2011 when they went 0 for 8 on third down against the Jets. They also had 47 total yards in the first half. That's the worst they've had in a half since Week 14 of the 2015 season. And Derek Carr had 3 straight starts with an interception, which tied his career high, and that ended that. And the aspect for me, which is the key for this game, is this is the Denver game at home. The Broncos showed on the road that they are a different team. The defense still is doing a fantastic job. They have the 3rd fewest first downs given up and the 4th fewest yards gained. However, Trevor Siemian could not throw a touchdown, and he threw 2 crucial interceptions, but I also do feel the refs kind of gypped them with that one call with Tyrod and Von. They were having fun, even though, by the way, Von Miller does have 3 sacks right now, which is good for him. Maybe not great for his standards through 3 games, but still good. But I'm going to take Denver here because I trust the Denver Broncos at home to beat up an Oakland secondary that Kirk Cousins destroyed. I mean, Kirk Cousins threw for 365 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm not saying Siemian will put up those numbers, but he can put up about 260, 280, 2 TDs, and if they can run the ball effectively, that should be enough. Like Chris Thompson at 150 yards receiving. They have Anderson and Booker. They both can probably put 150 yards receiving together. But I'm going to take Denver here in this case for those 2 reasons. They're at home, and that Raiders secondary, they fooled me. I just think, again, Trevor Siemian can do kind of similar damage at home to get the Broncos to win. Sounds like Denver here -3, and Denver straight up. Final 2 games here. Seattle over Indianapolis. I'm going to take Seattle here because they're predominantly at home. And the Colts, they've shown a lot of fight with Brissett. They've looked good over their last couple games. But I just think with Seattle, look, Russell Wilson threw for a career-high 373 yards. Seattle was also 42-7 when they scored 27 or more points. I don't know if they're going to put up 27 on the Colts defense. They could. But I just feel as the way of just when you look at Brissett, he'll put up a fight, and he's shown that he can move, and he's shown that he's got some chemistry. But going in there as his 5th career start, knowing that the Seahawks are desperate playing in front of their home crowd, that just seems like too much for me to give Indianapolis this win. Should be an interesting game. I'm going to take Seattle here to win it just because I feel like with their backs against the wall and how the entire division's rounding up, they could get this win and try to put themselves in the position of the driver's seat. I'm going to take Indianapolis here +13 because I think Seattle's proven they haven't done really well against the spread all year. So that's like Indianapolis here +13, but Seattle straight up. And finally, Chiefs over Redskins. I just think Kansas City right now is the best team in the NFL, most complete team. You have the leading rusher, one of the biggest burners in Tyreek Hill. They've won 12 straight games in the division. They have won 25 of the last 29 games. And though I think Washington, look, they're better than I thought they were, and I'll give them the 6.5 points because of that. I just think playing in Kansas City with that kind of balanced team, I don't think Washington has enough balance in order to help get them that win. So those are my thoughts on all the games and picks this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. And this is Matt the Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.